When I first moved to Sunnyside Estates, everything seemed perfect. The manicured lawns, the clean sidewalks, and the friendly neighbors waving as I unloaded the moving truck. My little farmhouse-style home sat on a quarter-acre lot at the edge of the development, one of the few properties with enough space for what I'd always dreamed of: a small backyard garden and a chicken coop. The previous owner had a special exemption for the coop. My realtor had assured me. It's all in the paperwork and properly grandfathered in. I had specifically chosen this house because of that exemption. After years in a cramped city apartment, I was ready for fresh eggs and the simple joy of caring for chickens. I'd done my research, checked the HOA bylaws, confirmed the exemption was valid, and even introduced myself to several board members before purchasing. The first HOA meeting I attended seemed harmless enough. Most discussions centered around community landscaping and the upcoming summer festival. That's when I first noticed Veronica Harrington, the HOA treasurer. While others were friendly, Veronica's smile never quite reached her eyes as she scanned my casual attire with obvious disapproval. "You must be the new resident in the old Miller place," she said afterward, her voice carrying that distinctive tone that somehow made a simple statement sound like an accusation. "I understand you're planning to keep livestock." "Just a few hens," I explained cheerfully. "The property has an exemption. I've already confirmed it with the board president. Exemptions can be reviewed," she replied with a thin smile. "We'll be watching to ensure there are no issues." I brushed off the interaction. Every neighborhood had one difficult person, right? 3 days later, I found the first warning letter taped to my front door. Violation. Unapproved exterior modification. Vegetable garden visible from street. Over the next few weeks, I received 4 more violation notices. My mailbox was supposedly 2 inches shorter than regulation height. My garage door needed repainting. Though it was only 3 years old, my garden hose was improperly stored when I left it out overnight. And finally, I was accused of having 5 chickens instead of the 4 allowed in my exemption. I did have only 4 chickens: Henrietta, Poppy, Marigold, and Sunshine, all properly housed in a tasteful, clean coop that matched my home's exterior. I'd even paid extra for design elements that complemented the neighborhood aesthetic. After each notice, I politely responded with proof of compliance, references to the HOA bylaws, and documentation of my exemption. Each time, the response was a short email acknowledging my temporary compliance, but promising continued monitoring. Then the eggs started disappearing. At first, I thought I was losing track or that one of my hens wasn't producing. But one morning, I caught a glimpse of someone in a tailored beige pantsuit slipping out from behind my shed, something clutched in her hand. I recognized that perfectly coiffed blonde bob immediately. Veronica. I confronted her the next day at her home. "Excuse me, Veronica, were you in my backyard yesterday morning?" "I was conducting an inspection," she replied without hesitation. "As HOA treasurer, I have the right to verify compliance with regulations." "That doesn't give you the right to take my eggs." Her eyes narrowed. "I don't know what you're talking about. However, paragraph 17, section C of the bylaws states that any products derived from livestock cannot be visible from common areas. Your egg collection basket was on your back porch, clearly visible from the walking path. So you took them? Those are my property. Confiscated evidence of violations is standard procedure," she said, closing her door in my face. The egg thefts continued despite my new routine of collecting them early and storing them inside immediately. Somehow, Veronica always seemed to know when I wasn't home, or when I slept in on weekends. My previously abundant supply dwindled to almost nothing. Then came the petition. Veronica had gathered signatures from neighbors to revoke my chicken exemption entirely, claiming numerous complaints about odor and noise. When I knocked on my neighbors' doors to investigate, most were apologetic. She said it was just a formality for insurance purposes. Mrs. Abernathy confessed. "I never complained about your chickens. In fact, I love hearing them cluck in the mornings." Mr. Jensen across the street admitted, "She told me you were planning to expand to a full farm operation, and I needed to sign to limit you to just the current setup." At the emergency HOA meeting Veronica called, I came prepared with statements from my immediate neighbors confirming they had no issues with my small coop. I also brought documentation proving my meticulous maintenance and the impossibility of odor problems. The meeting grew heated when another homeowner, Roberto, unexpectedly stood up. Before we vote on this petition, I think everyone should know that I was approached by Treasurer Harrington last month about selling farm-fresh organic eggs at our community farmers market. She had quite the supply, though I know for a fact she doesn't keep chickens. Veronica's face flushed crimson. Those were purchased from a local farm. With Sunnyside Estates labeled cartons? Roberto asked, producing one of my custom-designed egg cartons I'd reported missing. The board president cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps we should table this discussion until we can investigate further. Investigation won't be necessary, Veronica snapped. As treasurer, I'm invoking emergency powers to suspend all livestock exemptions pending a full bylaw review. Security will inspect the property tomorrow for immediate removal of all non-compliant animals. As voices erupted in protest, I sat stunned. How could one person have this much power in a simple homeowners association? The morning after the HOA meeting, I woke to find an official-looking man with a clipboard and a Sunnyside Estates security jacket standing at my coop. 2 others waited by a van emblazoned with Animal Control Services. Ma'am, we have orders to remove these animals as they're in violation of HOA regulations, the clipboard man stated flatly. You absolutely do not have that authority, I replied, standing firmly between them and my coop. The board hasn't voted on any such measure, and the emergency powers Veronica claimed don't exist in our bylaws. I've read every page. While they huddled to discuss their next move, my neighbor and unexpected ally Roberto approached with a document in hand. This is an emergency injunction, he explained. My brother's a lawyer. The HOA can't remove your property without due process. These gentlemen need to leave now. The security officer looked uncertain but eventually nodded. We'll be back when the paperwork is in order. After they left, Roberto handed me a business card. My brother can help you fight this properly. Veronica's done this before. She forced out the Millers who lived here before you. They had the original chicken exemption, but she wanted this property for her daughter. When they wouldn't sell, she made their lives miserable until they gave up. That night, I could barely sleep. The stress was becoming unbearable. I'd sunk my savings into this home, specifically chosen for the chicken exemption that allowed me to pursue my small dream of semi-sustainable living. Now everything was being threatened by one power-hungry woman who apparently wanted my eggs and possibly my property. The next morning, I was surprised by a delivery. A large crate sent by my cousin from her farm several counties over. Inside was a magnificent rooster with gleaming black and green feathers, a dramatic red comb, and an imperious look in his beady eyes. The enclosed note read, "This is Brutus. He's the most protective rooster I've ever raised. Perfect watchdog for your hens. He's also the lowest. Thought you might need him now. Good luck. P.S. Completely legal as your exemption specifies chickens, not specifically hens." I stared at Brutus as he assessed his new surroundings with regal bearing. Roosters were known for 2 things: protecting their flock and crowing, loudly, frequently, and starting well before dawn. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Roberto's brother, an attorney specializing in property law, confirmed what I'd suspected. Veronica had been systematically abusing her position, and the emergency powers she'd invoked simply didn't exist in our HOA charter. This is a clear case of harassment and theft, he explained during our consultation. We can file for a formal hearing and probably win, but these cases can drag on for months. Meanwhile, I had implemented what I privately called Operation Wake Up Call. Brutus, the rooster, had been strategically relocated to a reinforced coop positioned at the point of my property closest to Veronica's master bedroom window, approximately 50 feet away and perfectly legal according to zoning regulations. Brutus, bless his feathered heart, took to his new home with enthusiasm. His first morning crow came precisely at 4:37 a.m., followed by repeat performances approximately every 7 minutes until well after sunrise. His afternoon repertoire was equally impressive, with territorial announcements whenever anyone approached my property line. 3 days into Brutus's residency, Veronica appeared at my door, dark circles under her eyes and her usually immaculate appearance noticeably disheveled. That thing has to go, she hissed. It's disturbing the peace. Good morning, Veronica, I replied cheerfully. Brutus is actually specifically covered under my livestock exemption, which states up to 5 chickens. A rooster is, scientifically speaking, a chicken. I've double-checked with the county agricultural office, and his noise levels fall within acceptable limits for our rural adjacent zoning. This is harassment, like stealing someone's eggs, or filing false violation reports, or attempting to remove legally owned animals without authority. I countered, my smile unwavering. By the way, I've installed security cameras around my property. Smile. She stormed off, but I knew this was far from over. That evening, I emailed every HOA board member with a detailed accounting of Veronica's actions, including security footage of her taking eggs from my property and documented evidence of her false statements. I copied Roberto's attorney brother and requested an emergency board meeting to address these governance concerns. While waiting for responses, I also began knocking on doors throughout the neighborhood, introducing neighbors to the real story and to cartons of my fresh eggs, which I started giving away freely. I wouldn't want anyone to think I'm selling these against HOA regulations. I explained innocently to each neighbor. Veronica seems very concerned about that. By the way, have you been approached about signing any petitions recently? Word spread quickly through Sunnyside Estates. My security footage of Veronica's egg thefts became the neighborhood's most watched video, shared through our community message board and garnering shocking responses. She told me your chickens were disease carriers. She's been selling premium organic eggs at the farmer's market for $8 a dozen. Last year she had my koi pond filled in because it was attracting wildlife. Then her landscape company offered to install a water feature in the exact same spot for $5,000. The most damning revelation came from our elderly board secretary, Mrs. Finch, who finally spoke up. Veronica has been altering financial records. Fines don't go to the HOA account. They go to a special projects account only she controls. 3 days before our scheduled emergency meeting, Veronica attempted a counteroffensive. A formal letter arrived by certified mail ordering the immediate removal of livestock creating excessive noise disturbance, signed by Veronica and 2 board members. I immediately called those board members. I never signed that, Mr. Patterson insisted. That's not even my signature. The second signatory said the same thing. Meanwhile, Brutus continued his vigilant morning announcements, now seeming to crow with extra vigor whenever Veronica's car appeared in the cul-de-sac. My security cameras caught her approaching my property line several times, spray bottle in hand, only to retreat when Brutus charged toward her, safely contained but clearly intimidating behind his fence. The day before the emergency meeting, Roberto knocked on my door, grinning widely. "You won't believe what I found," he said, holding up a flash drive. The HOA keeps all records in a shared cloud drive. Guess who forgot to delete her personal folder when she uploaded the doctored financial statements? The folder contained years of manipulated documents, including a list of properties Veronica wanted to acquire, with my address highlighted, template violation letters with excessive fine amounts, email exchanges with her sister's landscaping company showing kickbacks for HOA contracts, a draft lawsuit against me with completely fabricated health code violations. This is enough to not just remove her from the board, but potentially file criminal charges, Roberto said. That night, Brutus crowed until nearly midnight, something roosters rarely do, as if he sensed the coming confrontation. The emergency HOA meeting was moved from its usual location in the community clubhouse to the larger recreation center to accommodate the unprecedented turnout. Nearly every household in Sunnyside Estates was represented, with folding chairs hastily added to handle the overflow crowd. Veronica arrived precisely on time, immaculately dressed as always, though the strain of sleepless nights showed in her tight expression. She faltered momentarily upon seeing the crowd but quickly recovered, marching to her treasurer's seat with rigid posture. Before we begin with the agenda items, the board president began nervously. I'd like to. Point of order. Veronica interrupted. This meeting was called under false pretenses and should be adjourned immediately. Furthermore, I've filed an emergency injunction against certain residents for creating hostile living conditions and endangering property values with unauthorized livestock. I stood up. Mr. President, I believe everyone here deserves to see evidence before any decisions are made. With that, Roberto connected his laptop to the room's projector, and Veronica's private HOA folder was displayed for all to see. Gasps and murmurs filled the room as he methodically walked through the documents, highlighting the financial discrepancies, the forged signatures, and finally, her personal list of properties targeted for acquisition, including her notes on strategies to force owners out. My husband died in this community, Mrs. Abernathy called out, her voice shaking. We lived here for 30 years, and last year you told me my memorial garden for him violated 7 different regulations. Others began sharing similar stories: arbitrary fines, selective enforcement, denied improvement requests that mysteriously received approval after hiring Veronica's recommended contractors. Veronica stood up, face flushed. These accusations are absurd. I've dedicated years to maintaining our property values and community standards. Without proper oversight, this neighborhood would descend into chaos. Chicken coops today, pig farms tomorrow. Is that why you've been stealing my eggs and selling them? I asked calmly. To prevent chaos? The security footage began playing, multiple dates and times showing Veronica entering my property, taking eggs, and once attempting to tamper with the coop lock. That's taken out of context, she stammered. I was conducting inspections while putting eggs in your designer handbag. Someone called out. The board president cleared his throat. In light of this evidence, I'm calling for an immediate vote of no confidence and the removal of Veronica Harrington from the HOA board, pending a full audit and potential legal action. The vote was nearly unanimous. As Veronica gathered her belongings, she leaned close as she passed my chair. This isn't over, she whispered. I have friends in the county zoning office. Enjoy your chickens while you can. But her threat was interrupted by a familiar sound that somehow carried through the recreation center walls. Brutus, crowing triumphantly in the distance as if he knew justice had been served. The weeks following Veronica's removal brought remarkable changes to Sunnyside Estates. The forensic audit revealed over $50,000 in misappropriated funds, selective enforcement of rules, and a pattern of harassment that had driven away 6 homeowners over the past 3 years, all of whom had sold their properties below market value to shell companies that traced back to Veronica's family members. Criminal charges were filed, and Veronica moved out quietly one night, her house suddenly on the market with a drastically reduced for quick sale rider on the sign. The HOA itself underwent a transformation. New bylaws were drafted with clear checks and balances. The revised regulations embraced sustainable living practices, including community garden spaces and reasonable accommodations for small-scale urban farming. My chicken exemption was not only formalized but expanded into a pilot program allowing interested residents to keep limited backyard chickens with proper housing and care guidelines. I volunteered to lead workshops on responsible chicken keeping, which proved surprisingly popular. Most satisfying was the community's embracing of Brutus, who became something of a neighborhood mascot. Children would stop by after school to feed him approved treats, and his morning crows became a cherished community timekeeper rather than a nuisance. 3 months after the showdown, I received an unexpected letter, a formal apology from the HOA board for the harassment I'd endured, accompanied by a refund check for all the fraudulent fines I'd paid and a handcrafted sign for my garden gate that read, Home of Brutus, Defender of Sunnyside Estates. The final twist came when Roberto knocked on my door one evening, holding a familiar-looking legal document. You're not going to believe this, he said, grinning. Remember Veronica's threat about having friends in county zoning? Turns out those friends were actually investigating her for bribing officials. The county just revised its zoning ordinance. Our whole neighborhood is now officially designated as agricultural residential mixed use to protect against exactly the kind of abuses she was perpetrating. I laughed. So not only can I keep my chickens, but they're now more legally protected than before. Exactly. Veronica essentially secured your right to keep chickens forever, and anyone else's who wants them. The county's even using our HOA case as an example in their training materials. That weekend, we held the first Sunnyside Estates Farmers Market in our community park. My booth, selling fresh eggs, homemade bread, and garden vegetables, stood next to Roberto's honey stand and Mrs. Abernathy's flower arrangements. Children ran around a small petting area where Brutus held court from a portable pen, regally accepting admiration and the occasional treat. As I looked around at neighbors chatting, exchanging recipes, and building genuine community connections, I couldn't help but think that sometimes it takes a rooster to teach us all about standing our ground. In my